Well, hello there, YouTube. Welcome back. I know you haven't gone anywhere. It's me who hasn't been here. And I want to say that it's great to be back. It's been a minute since I've done a YouTube video, and I'm back here on January, what's today? January 3rd, and I'm going to talk about New Year's resolutions. Now, New Year's resolutions, I want to be very, very clear right up front that New Year's resolutions are not bad, all right? But in almost all circumstances, New Year's resolutions don't really work. And in this video today, I'm going to tell you, number one, why they don't work, and number two, how to manage and how to do New Year's resolutions that do work. New Year's resolutions that will be sustainable, that will ultimately create the change that you're really looking for in your life. Now, again, the first thing I want to say here, the next first thing I want to say here is that there is never, or let me put it this way, the first problem with the way you're doing New Year's resolutions, and when I say you, of course, I'm not talking about anybody specifically. I'm talking about the general you, okay? Just the way most people manage or find and set and try to follow through with New Year's resolutions. The first issue, the first problem is that you're doing it on New Year's Day or New Year's Eve or just a couple of days before or whatever. And I say that not because there's something wrong with New Year's Day. Of course there's not. But the thing is that New Year's Day is just a little square on a calendar. And it's a calendar that we created, a few hundred years ago. Some guy named Gregorian, Pope Gregory, I guess, right? Created the calendar that we follow today, and we put everything, our whole life's satisfaction and our whole ability to be happy, we put onto this one little square that is 1/365th of the whole of the year. So you can see where I'm going with this probably. And I'm not going to say something like silly and cheesy, like we should treat every day like New Year's Day. But in a sense, that is what I'm going to say. Because the truth of it is that the way that self-awareness works, because that's really what we're talking about when we talk about New Year's resolutions, right? What we're talking about is bringing an awareness to something that is problematic for us, something that's either blocking our ability to be happy, that's blocking our ability to be successful in our lives, in our romance, in our friendships, in our finances, in our careers, whatever the thing is, right? There's some awareness that has arisen that is, here's a problem in my life, and this is something I need to deal with. So it's always about self-awareness, okay? But here's the thing. Self-awareness doesn't work like that. It can, right? Like, again, if we all agree that, okay, on New Year's Day is the day that we bring self-awareness and we try to decide, like, okay, what do I need to change? What do I have to stop eating too much of? What do I have to start eating more of? What do I need to change in order to, impact the rest of my life? And that's great that we do that, and it's wonderful. Again, there's no problem with, doing that on New Year's Day, but the problem with only doing it on New Year's Day is that it's not really working for you, and it's not going to work for you, because that's what I mean when I say that self-awareness doesn't work like that. Self-awareness it's a moment-by-moment process. It's something that we do all the time, at least if we want to be most effective about it. Because really, the self-awareness is, the most important self-awareness. It's not about and again, what we're doing more, let me sidetrack here for a second. What we're doing mostly when we're setting New Year's resolutions is we're looking at the surface level stuff. Right? We're looking at the behaviors, we're looking at the habits, we're looking at the addictions, we're looking at the, the body shape or the energy level that we feel at work or foggy mind or whatever. Those are symptoms. Those are on the surface level. Those are the behaviors that we see. And it's great to be aware of those things. It's great to stop, even if it's, well, again, Even if all we can do is once a year, then do it once a year, of course. And there's nothing wrong with ever noticing that, oh man, maybe alcohol is, more maladaptive than I've been treating it all this time. Or maybe, eating the ice cream that I eat every night is, interfering with my health on some level, right? Like that's always a beneficial thing to do. But the real juice, the real, saucy stuff that we want to get to is down below that. It's about and that's what I mean about self-awareness. And that's what I mean about a deeper and more, truly sustained self-awareness, which includes the awareness of what makes me eat too much ice cream, what makes me drink too much alcohol. Because there's one part of me where alcohol is just, helping me to relax and sort of unwind after a long day. But then there's this other part of me that can't stop drinking it. Right? So it's not alcohol that's the problem. And yes, stopping alcohol could certainly be part of the solution for you. It's been part of my solution. Many of you know already that I'm sober now for over 14 years. I know that alcohol is something that I can't mess with. Because the minute I try to mess with alcohol is the minute alcohol messes with me. And it's just, it hurts me. And it harms me in a lot of ways, physically, mentally, emotionally, or cognitively. So what we got to figure out when we're trying to, or what I could say is that the only New Year's resolution that any of us really should be setting is the New Year's resolution that says, I'm going to practice more to become more self-aware all the time. I want to dig deeper. I want to understand what it is that is, making me, truly the core thing that is making me unhappy and making me try to fill that unhappiness or replace that unhappiness with this behavior. I want to get down deep in there. Now, in a lot of ways, yes, a lot of people get that through therapy to varying degrees of success. Because, and again, the issue with therapy, and again, I will never, ever, ever be someone who says you shouldn't go to therapy. I will never, ever be someone who says therapy's bad or worthless or a waste of time. But therapy has the same sort of dynamic as only setting New Year's resolutions on New Year's Day, or only, trying to improve yourself on New Year's Day. And what I mean by that is that many people, and I've talked to many therapists in my life, just as, friends and colleagues, and I've talked to many people who are in therapy, and I know people who have been in therapy for years and years and years and years. And what typically happens for a lot of people in therapy is that it's like, okay, I have this 1 hour every week in which I do this thing. I get into this office and I start digging in and I start talking about stuff and I cry and I get all this out. And then what do? I go back and I just do my life, just like whatever. And then the next week I do it again and again and again and again. And again, there's nothing wrong with doing that process. There's nothing that should say, don't do that process. What I'm saying is that process shouldn't stop when your therapist says, okay, our time is up every Thursday at 6:15. What the best way to approach therapy is the same thing that I'm saying, which is the best way to approach self-awareness, which is to see it as something that we're always kind of doing. We're always looking at ourselves. We're always, trying to, sort of understand ourselves and address ourselves. Hello, self. And the reason why it's so important to do it all the time, not just once a week, not just once a year, but all the time, is because we are different all the time. And really the stuff that we're looking at and the stuff that we're really, finding in this quest of self-awareness and this quest of self-improvement, what we're really finding is how we respond to life. How do we respond when life applies some pressure to us. Do we respond in a positive way, a constructive and healthy, self-reflective and open-minded and adaptable way? Or do we respond with, resistance and bitterness and anger and attachments and all kinds of judgments and stuff like that? Because it's all that stuff that's preventing you from knowing yourself. And knowing yourself is the whole game. And yes, I mean, some of that knowledge of the self is going to be hard to see. Yes, that's why we cry in therapy. And that's why, I mean, you might see my eyes. I was crying all morning, And again, crying is not a bad thing, right? But crying was my response to something that happened. And in that crying is where I can start to understand myself. And yes, I mean, some really beautiful realizations came out of my crying this morning. Does that make crying good? No, but it certainly doesn't make it bad either. Crying's just crying. Laughing's just laughing. Loving's just loving. Caring's just caring. And we can love and care and laugh and cry with ourselves and for ourselves all the time. Now, a lot of times when I say that, I see people's expressions change. I'm like, oh man, you mean I gotta be working on myself all the time now, But honestly, it doesn't come like that. It doesn't feel like that. It really doesn't. It feels instead like you're never really working on yourself because you always are, right? But not in the sense that it's some kind of drudgery, and not in the sense that it's some kind of hassle or difficulty. And again, that is one of the responses that you start working with. When you start feeling oh man, this work's a hassle. Okay, that response, let me feel that. Let me check that out. Let me work with that. Let me try to understand that. And in turn, in the process of understanding that, I'm understanding me. And as I understand me, I can then affect real changes. I can actually make, not resolutions, not to say, okay, I'm going to pick this one day of the year and change all this stuff, but instead, I can watch all the ways in which this thing shows up in my life. And in watching it and in becoming the non-identified observer of it, I am able to work with it. I'm able to, put it, look at it from different angles. I can put it down on the table. I can walk away from it. I can come back to it. I can show, hey, you look at this, therapist. What do you think of this? And that's the way your therapy is going to get way, way more productive. I can promise you that. And the beautiful thing is that all this stuff I'm talking about, I'm talking in pretty general terms about, I'm talking in pretty general terms about, this self-awareness and discovery and understanding and digging and all these, sort of buzzwords almost, right? But what we're talking about so simply is just paying attention. Because through that attention, through that paying attention, moment by moment, without clinging, without resistance, and without judgment, that is where we're able to, or through that process, I should say, not an ability. It's the same way that lifting weights with this arm is going to build up this muscle, okay? That by doing attention training exercises, we cultivate a wider and deeper awareness, which includes a wider and deeper awareness of ourselves. And as we practice doing that again, without attachments and without resistance and without judgment, we start to develop a kindness and a caring for ourselves as we're doing the practices. And that kindness and caring, again, sort of extends out from the practice and sort of fills in the gaps between the practices. And that's where a lot of times, and people who I've taught these practices to, oh, by the way, we're talking about 10 minutes a day or so. I mean, it's not, and the way I teach it is with, I teach it using the stuff that you're already doing in your life. So it's not even going to feel like 10 minutes. It's going to feel like literally nothing. It's going to feel like just doing the things you're doing a little bit differently. But over the course of a few months, it's like, wow, where has this been all my life? Because then you start to again, you start to recognize the ways in which it's all in here. It has nothing to do with that person. It has nothing to do with the job. It has nothing to do with the stressors or the traumas or whatever. I mean, all that stuff is important, and we don't, just completely discard all that stuff. But that's not the thing that's the real issue. The real issue is deeper than that. And so, again, it becomes a sort of a way of being more than anything else. And that way of being is a way that is, again, kind and caring and tolerant and adaptive with ourselves. And that doesn't mean letting ourselves off the hook. Okay, that absolutely does not mean letting ourselves off the hook. In fact, it's the opposite. When you're able to develop this caring and kind and self-compassionate, position vis-a-vis your, everything, your behaviors, your feelings, your emotions, your thoughts, everything, when you can develop a caring and sort of disidentified, observing, point of view on that stuff, you will actually be able to hold yourself more accountable than you've ever done in your life. But again, that accountability is not going to feel like I'm fighting myself. That accountability is going to feel like, okay, what can I do to support myself right now? So I said in the beginning of this video that one of the things I'm going to tell you about is how to set sustainable, New Year's resolutions, because that is another practical problem with New Year's resolutions, right? Is that we tend to aim a lot higher than we have any business doing. We tend to really, in that morning of New Year's Day where everything seems full of promise and full of potential, we tend to overestimate what we're going to be able to sustain. And that's why 3 weeks later, we drop back into our old habitual behaviors. And the problem with that is that then we feel shame, right? We feel like, I just can't do it. Not guilt, which is, we don't feel like, I said, guilt would look like, I set a New Year's resolution goal that was just too high. Shame is, I can't even get this right. And once we get into that space, we are moving ourselves further and further and further away from the self-awareness that is truly going to change anything. So in order to, if you've already set some New Year's resolutions, think about scaling them down. Think about scaling them down, and think mostly about being not being like, not like saying, it doesn't matter, not being apathetic to yourself on the New Year's resolutions, but rather being, flexible, adaptable, like be gentle with yourself with it. Which means that, yes, and this is the same way I teach my clients and students about these practices, right? Yes, we're going to set this intention to do it X amount of whatever, right? But we're also at the same time going to recognize that on those days where it's like it's hard to do, we're going to, instead of like forcing it, we're going to sit and we're going to say, okay, what's the hardness? Let me pay attention to what's hard about it. And that then becomes like, even when we fail to do the thing that we're saying we're doing, we're actually still doing something really positive. So in other words, when if you set an intention that, I'm not gonna, eat any ice cream at all for the whole year, right? Maybe think of, I'm gonna try not to eat so much ice cream. And when the desire to eat ice cream comes up, I'm gonna sit with that desire, and I'm gonna use that as a moment of reflection. And by looking at the desire for the ice cream, I don't need the ice cream anymore. That's how it works. If you want some help with this, I'm here to facilitate that, okay? I've got lots of exciting stuff coming up, okay? I've got a couple of group programs coming up. I've got a couple, I always have one-on-one availability. But this month, I'm going to be doing a couple of, sessions about this, okay? Because I guarantee you that, half the people on YouTube over the next, 3 or 4 weeks are going to feel that feeling that I just told you, that feeling of shame, that I can't even do blank. I can't even do a simple New Year's resolution. And that's not true. It's not true at all. And I'm here to help you see that truth. Okay, so keep an eye out. I'll be making announcements. If you want to drop me your email or something in a message, or I'm happy to put you on my email list. But most of all, just hang tight and keep an eye on this channel, and I'll be back soon with some more information. All right. I wish you all well. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And yeah, Happy New Year.